The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the weathered wooden building, and Rose Garrett pressed her trembling fingers against the bruise on her cheekbone, trying to determine if the powder she had applied that morning still concealed the yellowish-green mark beneath her left eye. 3 marriages, 3 funerals, and each husband had left her with more scars than the last, though the physical ones healed faster than those carved into her spirit. At 24 years old, she felt ancient, hollow, as though all the softness had been scraped from her bones and replaced with the constant expectation of pain. The marriage broker in Santa Fe had assured her that this arrangement would be different, that Warren Vance was a good man, a solitary rancher who needed a wife to help manage his property outside Chloride, Arizona. Rose had heard similar promises before. Her first husband, selected by her father when she was barely 18, had seemed respectable until the wedding night revealed his true nature. The second had been her own desperate choice after the first died in a riding accident, and she had chosen poorly, trading one nightmare for another. The third had been the worst, a silver-tongued merchant who had courted her with poetry and beaten her with his fists, until pneumonia claimed him 6 months prior. Now, stepping down from the stagecoach into the dusty street of Chloride, Arizona, in the spring of 1884, Rose felt the familiar knot of dread tightening in her stomach. The town looked rough, a collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures clinging to the desert landscape, with the mountains rising in the distance like sentinels. Mining operations had brought people here, chasing copper and silver, and the town thrummed with that particular energy of a place where fortunes could be made or lost in a single day. She carried only one small trunk, containing everything she owned in the world. The marriage broker had arranged for Warren Vance to meet her at the general store, and as Rose made her way down the wooden sidewalk, her muscles tensed with each step. She had learned to read the signs, the set of a man's jaw, the way his hands curled into fists, the particular glint in his eyes that preceded violence. She would assess this Warren Vance within moments of meeting him, and if he showed even the slightest indication of cruelty, she would find a way to leave, even if it meant scrubbing floors in a saloon or taking in laundry until she could afford passage elsewhere. The general store stood at the corner of 2 intersecting streets, its false front painted with fading letters advertising dry goods and supplies. Rose pushed open the door, the bell above jingling, and stepped into the dimly lit interior. The proprietor, a stout woman with graying hair, looked up from behind the counter. "You must be Miss Garrett," the woman said, her voice neither warm nor cold, simply matter of fact. "Warren said you would be arriving today. I am Mrs. Henderson. He is waiting out back." Rose's heart began to pound. Out back, away from witnesses, away from anyone who might hear if she needed help. Her hands went cold and she considered turning around, walking back to the stagecoach, begging the driver to take her anywhere else. But she had nowhere else to go. No money. No family who would take her in. She had burned those bridges when she married against her father's wishes the second time, and his death 2 years ago had left her completely alone. "Thank you," Rose managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Henderson's expression softened slightly. "Go on through that door there. He has been waiting nearly an hour. Wanted to make sure he did not miss you." Rose walked toward the indicated door on wooden legs, each step requiring conscious effort. She pushed it open and stepped into the bright sunlight of a small garden plot behind the store, blinking as her eyes adjusted. A man stood there, tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. He wore clean work clothes, not fancy but well-maintained, and a hat that he removed the moment he saw her. But it was not his appearance that stopped Rose in her tracks. It was what he held in his hands, flowers. A bouquet of wildflowers in shades of yellow, purple, and white, tied together with a simple piece of twine. They looked freshly picked, the stems still showing moisture, and as Warren Vance stepped forward, Rose saw something in his face that made her chest constrict with an emotion she could not immediately name. He looked nervous, actually nervous. His blue eyes, clear and direct, held no calculation, no coldness, no hint of the cruelty she had learned to recognize. Instead, he looked at her with something that resembled hope mixed with anxiety, as though he feared she might reject him. "Miss Garrett," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I am Warren Vance. I thought you might like these. I grew them myself in my garden at the ranch. I know it is not much, but I wanted to give you something to welcome you." Rose stared at the flowers, then at his face, then back at the flowers. In all her marriages, in all her courtships, no man had ever given her flowers. Jewelry, yes, which could be shown off to demonstrate wealth. Expensive fabrics, certainly, which reflected well on the husband's status. But simple flowers, grown with his own hands, offered with genuine nervousness that she might not accept them. Never. Her eyes began to burn and she blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in front of this stranger. She had learned not to cry, learned that tears only made things worse, that they attracted more violence rather than compassion. But the unexpected kindness of this gesture, the sheer novelty of being greeted with gentleness instead of immediate demands, cracked something inside her carefully constructed armor. "They are beautiful," she said, her voice thick. She reached out slowly, half expecting him to snatch them away, to laugh at her for believing the gesture was real. But he simply placed them in her hands, his fingers careful not to touch hers, respecting her space. "I was not sure what colors you might like," Warren said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "So I brought a variety. The purple ones are desert lupine, the yellow are brittlebush, and the white are sacred datura. They all grow wild around here, but I have been cultivating them in my garden. I find that growing things helps me think." Rose looked down at the flowers, touching one petal with her fingertip. It felt impossibly soft, impossibly delicate. She had become so accustomed to harshness that gentleness felt foreign, almost dangerous in its unfamiliarity. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one has ever given me flowers before." Warren's expression flickered with something that might have been pain or anger, but not directed at her. "Then the men in your life were fools," he said quietly. "A woman should be given flowers, should be treated with care. My mother always said that how a man treats the small things tells you everything about his character. If he cannot bother to pick a flower for the woman he hopes to build a life with, then he is not worth her time." Rose felt tears spill over despite her best efforts. She turned her face away, ashamed of her weakness, waiting for the irritation, the sharp comment about female hysteria, the demand that she control herself. Instead, Warren's voice came soft with concern. "Miss Garrett, if you are unhappy with this arrangement, please say so now. I will pay for your room at the boarding house and your return passage to Santa Fe. I know that marriage brokers sometimes misrepresent situations, and if you find me unsuitable, I will not hold you to any agreement." Rose's head snapped up, and she stared at him in disbelief. "You would let me leave?" "Of course," Warren said, his brow furrowing in confusion. "I want a wife, not a prisoner. I want a partner, someone who chooses to be with me. If that is not you, if you do not think we could build something good together, then forcing you to stay would be wrong." Rose studied his face, searching for the lie, for the trap. Men did not offer women choices. They made demands, issued orders, expected obedience. This had to be some kind of test, a way to see if she would try to run so he would have an excuse to punish her later. But his eyes remained steady, patient, waiting for her answer without any hint of threat. "I have nowhere else to go," Rose admitted, the words scraped raw from her throat. "The marriage broker took my last bit of money. If I return to Santa Fe, I will have nothing." Warren's jaw tightened, but again, the anger seemed directed outward, not at her. "That man is a thief. He told me you were coming willingly, that you wanted a fresh start. He said nothing about taking all your money." "I do want a fresh start," Rose said quickly, afraid he would change his mind about the arrangement. "I just want you to know that I am not here because I have choices. I am here because I have none left." "Then let me offer you one," Warren said. He took a step back, giving her more space. "Come to the ranch with me. I will show you the house, the property, how I live. If you decide you want to go through with the marriage, we can see the pastor tomorrow. If you decide you cannot bear it, I will take you back to town, and we will figure out another arrangement. Perhaps you could work for Mrs. Henderson at the store or at the boarding house. I will not leave you destitute." Rose's hands tightened on the flower stems. "Why would you do that? You do not know me. I could be terrible. I could be a thief or a liar or lazy." A small smile touched Warren's lips, the first she had seen, and it transformed his face from serious to genuinely warm. "Could be, I suppose. But the marriage broker gave me your references, what few there were. You have been widowed 3 times, each time left with nothing. You have worked as a seamstress, a teacher, a housekeeper. You can read and write and do figures. And when I wrote to ask what you wanted in a husband, you wrote back with the most honest letter I have ever received. You said you wanted kindness above all else, that you would work hard and be faithful, but you could not bear cruelty. That told me everything I needed to know." Rose remembered writing that letter in the tiny rented room she could barely afford, her hands shaking as she penned the words. She had nearly thrown it away, certain that no man would want a wife who made demands, even such simple ones. But she had been desperate enough to be honest, and apparently that honesty had reached someone who valued it. "I meant every word," she said. "I will work hard. I know ranching is difficult and I am not afraid of labor. I can cook and clean and mend and manage a household. I can help with animals if you teach me. I just need—" She faltered, unsure how to articulate the simple, desperate need that had driven her to respond to the marriage broker's advertisement. "Kindness," Warren finished for her. "You need to not be hurt. You need to feel safe." The fact that he understood, that he could say it so plainly, made Rose's tears flow faster. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Warren gestured toward the street. "My wagon is out front. Let me collect your trunk from the stagecoach and we will head to the ranch. It is about 5 miles outside town, up against the foothills. The ride will give us time to talk, to get to know each other a bit before you have to make any decisions." Rose followed him through the store, clutching her flowers like a lifeline. "Mrs. Henderson gave her an appraising look, but said nothing. Outside, Warren had a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses, and he loaded her trunk into the back with easy strength before helping her up onto the seat. His hand under her elbow was brief and impersonal, simply offering support, and he released her the moment she was settled. As they rolled out of Chloride, heading into the open desert landscape dotted with saguaro cacti and creosote bushes, Rose found herself gradually relaxing. Warren did not demand conversation, did not pepper her with questions or make crude comments. Instead, he pointed out landmarks, explaining the geography of the area in a voice that suggested he genuinely loved this harsh, beautiful land. "That is Packsaddle Mountain," he said, indicating a distinctive peak to the east. "And those are the Surbat Mountains running north. The ranch sits in a valley between two ridges, which gives us some shelter from the worst winds and a bit more water than most properties around here. I have a good well and a spring that runs year-round, which is why I was able to start the garden. How long have you been here? Rose asked, finding her voice. 5 years, Warren replied. I came from Texas originally, worked as a ranch hand and cowboy for years, saving every penny. When I heard about land opening up in Arizona territory, I came west to start my own place. It has been hard work, building it up from nothing, but I have about 200 head of cattle now, some horses, chickens, and a few goats. It is not a grand operation, but it is mine, and it provides a decent living. Why did you wait so long to seek a wife? Rose asked, then immediately regretted the question. It sounded like criticism, like she was questioning his choices, but Warren did not seem offended. I wanted to have something to offer first, he said simply. My father was a good man, but he was poor, and I saw how hard my mother worked, how she struggled to make ends meet. I promised myself that when I married, I would be able to provide properly for a wife, that she would not have to work herself to the bone just to survive. It took longer than I expected to build up the ranch, and now I am 31 and realize I should have sought a partner sooner. 2 hands are better than one, and a wife is meant to be a partner, not just another burden on a man's resources. Rose absorbed this, the concept so foreign to her experience that she struggled to believe it. My husband's all said a wife was meant to serve, to obey, to submit to her husband's will in all things. Warren was quiet for a moment, the only sound the creak of the wagon wheels and the clip-clop of the horses' hooves. Finally, he said, Did you love them, your husbands? No, Rose said, the word stark and honest. The first was chosen for me. The second I married out of desperation. The third I thought I might grow to love, but he made that impossible within a week of our wedding. Then they were not real marriages, Warren said firmly. A marriage should be a partnership built on respect and affection, at minimum, and love if you are fortunate enough to find it. My parents had that. They worked together, made decisions together, supported each other. When my father died, my mother grieved not just for losing a husband, but for losing her best friend. That is what I want. Someone to build a life with, not someone to order around. Rose looked down at the flowers in her lap, their colors vivid against her dark traveling dress. I do not know if I can be that, she admitted. I do not know if I remember how to be anything except afraid. Then we will take it slow, Warren said. One day at a time, no pressure, no demands. Just 2 people getting to know each other and seeing if maybe, possibly, we could build something good together. The ranch appeared as they crested a gentle rise, and Rose felt her breath catch. It was not grand or fancy, but it had a certain rough beauty that appealed to her. The house was adobe, single-story but surprisingly spacious, with a covered porch running along the front. Several outbuildings dotted the property, including a large barn, a chicken coop, and what looked like a bunkhouse. Corrals held horses and cattle, and she could see the green of cultivated land behind the house, which must be the garden Warren had mentioned. It is not much, Warren said, and she heard the nervousness creeping back into his voice. But it is solid and well built. The house has 3 rooms, the main living area with the kitchen, a bedroom, and a small spare room I use for storage. If you decide to stay, the bedroom would be yours until we marry. I can sleep in the spare room or the bunkhouse. Rose turned to stare at him. You would give me the bedroom? Of course, Warren said, looking puzzled by her surprise. You are a guest, and it would be improper for me to expect anything else. Even after we marry, if we marry, we can take things at whatever pace you need. I will not force myself on you. Rose felt dizzy with the strangeness of this conversation. with the casual way Warren spoke of respecting her boundaries, as though it were the most natural thing in the world rather than a revolutionary concept. Warren pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and hopped down, then came around to help Rose descend. She accepted his hand this time, noticing the calluses that spoke of hard work, the gentleness with which he supported her weight. Once she was on the ground, he released her immediately and went to retrieve her trunk. "Let me show you inside," he said, carrying her trunk as though it weighed nothing. The interior of the house was clean and simply furnished, with whitewashed walls and sturdy furniture that looked handmade. The main room held a table with 4 chairs, a rocking chair near the fireplace, and a small settee. The kitchen area occupied one corner, with a cast-iron stove, a work table, and shelves holding dishes and supplies. Everything was organized and tidy, though there was a distinctly masculine quality to the space, a lack of any decorative touches. "The bedroom is through here," Warren said, pushing open a door to reveal a room with a large bed covered in a simple quilt, a wardrobe, a dresser with a wash basin, and a small window that looked out toward the mountains. He set her trunk at the foot of the bed. "I changed the linens this morning. Everything should be fresh and clean. There is water in the pitcher, and I have soap and towels in the dresser. If you need anything else, just let me know." Rose stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by the simple hospitality of it all. She had expected demands, expectations, immediate consummation of their arrangement whether she wanted it or not. Instead, Warren was treating her like an honored guest, offering her privacy and respect. "I should start on supper," she said, needing something to do with her hands, some way to prove her worth. "If you tell me what provisions you have, I can prepare something." Warren shook his head. "You have been traveling all day. You should rest. I can make supper tonight." "You cook?" Rose asked, unable to hide her surprise. A slight smile touched Warren's lips again. "I have been living alone for 5 years. I learned to cook or starve. I am not fancy, but I can manage stew and biscuits and a few other basic things. You can help if you want the company, or you can rest if you prefer. Either way is fine with me." Rose found herself drawn to the kitchen area, watching as Warren pulled out ingredients and began assembling a meal with practiced efficiency. His movements were economical and confident, and she realized he was telling the truth. He genuinely knew how to take care of himself and saw no shame in it. "Can I help?" she asked tentatively. "Would you like to make the biscuits?" Warren offered. "The flour and lard are there, and the baking powder is in that tin. I never can get them as light as I would like." Rose moved to the work table, grateful for the familiar task. Baking was something she knew, something she was good at, and her hands moved automatically through the process of mixing and kneading. As she worked, she watched Warren from the corner of her eye. He moved around the kitchen with quiet competence, chopping vegetables, browning meat, adding seasonings with careful consideration. "Tell me about your family," Warren said as he worked. "The marriage broker said your parents had passed, but he gave me few other details." Rose's hands stilled in the dough for a moment before resuming their work. "My mother died when I was 12, fever. My father was a clerk in a lawyer's office in Missouri. He raised me alone, and when I turned 18, he arranged my first marriage to a business associate he thought would provide well for me. He meant well, I think. He had no way of knowing what kind of man he was giving me to." "What happened to your father?" Warren asked gently. "He died of a heart ailment 2 years ago. By then, I was married to my second husband, and my father and I had become estranged. He disapproved of my remarrying so soon after my first husband's death, thought it showed poor character. I suppose he was right in a way. I should have been more careful in my choice. You were young and alone and frightened, Warren said. Anyone would have done the same. There is no shame in seeking security. Rose cut out the biscuits and arranged them in the baking pan, then slid them into the oven. What about your family? Warren's expression grew distant. Both parents gone now. My father died when I was 22, kicked by a horse. My mother lasted another 5 years before the grief and hard work wore her down. I had 2 brothers, but one died in the war and the other moved to California. I have not heard from him in 3 years. I suppose I am alone in the world, same as you. They ate supper at the small table, and Rose found herself actually tasting the food, enjoying the simple flavors. Warren kept the conversation light, telling her about the ranch, the neighbors, the town. He spoke of his hopes for expanding the cattle operation, maybe adding some sheep, improving the garden to include fruit trees. I know sheep and cattle do not always mix well, he said. But I have been reading about ranchers who make it work by rotating grazing areas. I think with the right management, it could add another income stream. You raid? Rose asked, seizing on this detail. Warren looked almost embarrassed. I am not educated formal-like, but I taught myself when I was young. My mother insisted all her boys learn to read and write and do figures. She said ignorance was a choice, and she would not tolerate her sons choosing to be ignorant. I send away for books and journals sometimes, try to keep learning. Rose felt something shift inside her, some part of her that had been locked away beginning to cautiously emerge. I love to read, she confessed. I was a teacher for a short time between my first and second husbands. It was the happiest I have ever been, working with the children, helping them discover books. Why did you stop? Warren asked. My second husband forbade it. He said a wife working outside the home reflected poorly on him, made him look unable to provide, so I gave it up. Rose heard the bitterness in her own voice and tried to moderate it. I am sorry. I should not speak ill of the dead. Why not if they deserve it? Warren said bluntly. Being dead does not make a man's actions in life less cruel. If your husband prevented you from doing something you loved, something that brought you joy and helped others, then he deserves criticism. Rose stared at him, this unexpected man with his direct manner and unconventional ideas. You are very different from anyone I have ever known. Is that good or bad? Warren asked, his blue eyes searching her face. I am not certain yet, Rose admitted, but I think it might be good. After supper, Warren insisted on cleaning up while Rose put away the remaining food. As the sky darkened outside, he lit lamps to push back the shadows, and the house took on a warm, golden glow. Rose found herself relaxing in increments, her shoulders dropping from their habitual defensive hunch, her breathing deepening. Would you like to sit on the porch for a while? Warren asked. The stars are spectacular out here and the evening is mild. They sat in chairs on the porch, and Warren was right about the stars. They blazed across the sky in brilliant profusion, more than Rose had ever seen, unobscured by city lights or smoke. The desert air was cooling rapidly, and she could hear the distant howl of coyotes, the chirp of insects, the soft lowing of cattle in the corrals. It is so quiet, Rose murmured. I have always lived in towns where there is constant noise, people, activity. This is different. Does it bother you? Warren asked. The isolation. The nearest neighbor is 3 miles away and town is 5 miles. In winter, if we get a bad storm, we could be snowed in for days. I think I like it, Rose said slowly. The quiet feels peaceful, not lonely. Though I suppose it could feel different in winter. We would face that together, Warren said. That is the point of marriage, I think, to not have to face the hard things alone. Rose turned to look at him, his profile outlined by starlight. Why me? She asked. You could have chosen someone younger, prettier, someone without the history I carry. Warren met her gaze steadily. I am not looking for young and pretty. I am looking for real. Your letter was real, the most honest thing I have ever read. You did not try to present yourself as something you are not. You told me what you needed, what you feared, what you hoped for. That took courage, and courage is worth more to me than a pretty face. Rose felt tears threaten again, and she looked away, overwhelmed by the unexpected gift of being seen, truly seen, and valued for who she actually was rather than who she could pretend to be. I would like to stay, she said quietly, if you will have me. I would like to try to build something here, to see if maybe we could have what you describe, that partnership. Then you will stay, Warren said, and she heard the satisfaction in his voice. We will see the pastor tomorrow and arrange the wedding. Unless you want to wait longer, get to know me better first. No, Rose said. I have learned that getting to know someone before marriage tells you nothing about what they will be like after. I would rather be married and protected by law than simply living here without that security. Warren nodded, accepting her reasoning. Then tomorrow it is. For tonight you should rest. The bedroom is yours, and I will be in the bunkhouse if you need anything. The door has a lock if that makes you feel more comfortable. Rose appreciated the offer more than he could know. Thank you. For all of this. For the flowers, for your kindness, for giving me a choice. You deserve all that and more, Warren said simply. Sleep well, Rose. Hearing her first name from his lips sent a small shiver through her, not of fear but of something else, something she had forgotten existed. Possibility, perhaps. Hope. She retreated to the bedroom, locked the door more out of habit than fear, and changed into her nightgown. The bed was comfortable, the quilt soft, and through the small window she could see the stars still blazing. She thought of the flowers Warren had given her, now in a jar of water on the kitchen table, and for the first time in years, she fell asleep without dread tightening her chest. The next morning dawned clear and bright, and Rose woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She dressed quickly in her best dress, a dark blue calico that had seen better days but was clean and neatly mended. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Warren at the stove, breakfast already laid out. I thought we could eat and then head to town, he said. The pastor usually receives visitors in the morning. If you are still certain, that is. I am certain, Rose said, and meant it. Whatever the future held, it could not be worse than her past, and Warren had already shown her more kindness in one day than her previous husbands had shown in years. They ate breakfast in companionable silence, then Warren hitched up the wagon again. The ride to town passed quickly, and soon they were standing in the small church at the edge of Chloride, facing Pastor Williams, a kind-faced man in his 50s. Warren, the pastor said warmly, shaking his hand. It has been a while since I have seen you, and this must be Miss Garrett. Yes, sir, Warren replied. We would like to be married if you are willing to perform the ceremony. Pastor Williams looked between them, his expression thoughtful. This seems sudden. Have you two known each other long? We met yesterday, Rose said, deciding honesty was the best approach. This was arranged through a marriage broker, but I assure you, Pastor, I am entering this marriage of my own free will. The pastor's eyes were sharp but not unkind. Marriage is a serious covenant, not to be entered lightly. Warren, I have known you for 5 years, and you are a good man. Miss Garrett, I do not know you, but I would like to speak with you privately before I agree to perform this ceremony. Warren nodded and stepped outside, leaving Rose alone with the pastor. She braced herself for judgment, for questions about her past that would shame her. Instead, Pastor Williams said gently, I have seen too many women trapped in marriages that destroy their spirits. I need to know that you are choosing this freely, that you are not being coerced or forced. I am choosing it, Rose said firmly. Warren has been nothing but kind. He has given me choices, treated me with respect, offered me a way out if I wanted it. I am choosing to stay to marry him to try to build a life here." "And your previous marriages?" the pastor asked. The broker mentioned you had been widowed 3 times. Rose met his gaze directly. "My previous husbands were cruel men. I will not dishonor the dead by going into details, but I will say that I know the difference between cruelty and kindness, and Warren has shown me only kindness. If he proves false, at least I will have tried one more time, and if he proves true, then perhaps I will finally know what a real marriage should be." Pastor Williams studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well, I will perform the ceremony. But know this, both of you. Marriage is work. It requires patience, forgiveness, communication, and compromise. It will not always be easy. Are you both prepared for that?" "I am," Rose said. Warren, called back inside, said the same. The ceremony was simple and brief. There were no flowers, no guests, just the 3 of them in the small church with sunlight streaming through the windows. When Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife, Warren leaned forward and pressed a chaste kiss to Rose's forehead, a gesture so gentle and respectful that she felt tears prick her eyes again. They signed the marriage register, and Pastor Williams gave them a certificate to record with the county. As they left the church, Warren said, "Would you like to stop at the general store? I thought we could get some supplies and you could pick out anything you might need for the house." At the store, Mrs. Henderson greeted them with a knowing smile. "Congratulations on your marriage. I had a feeling it would work out." Rose browsed the shelves while Warren discussed provisions with Mrs. Henderson. She found herself drawn to the fabric section, her seamstress's eye evaluating the quality of the materials. There was a beautiful cream-colored muslin that would make lovely curtains for the bedroom window, and some cheerful yellow cotton that could brighten the main room. "Do you see something you like?" Warren asked, appearing at her elbow. "I was just thinking the house could use some curtains," Rose said, "but it is not necessary." "If you want to make curtains, get the fabric," Warren said easily. "The house could definitely use a woman's touch. It has been rather Spartan with just me living there." Rose selected the fabrics, along with thread and needles, and Warren added them to the pile of supplies without comment. He also purchased coffee, sugar, flour, and other staples, as well as a few items Rose had not expected: a book of poetry, a box of fancy tea, and a small mirror with an ornate frame. "The tea is from China," Warren explained. "I thought you might enjoy something special. And the mirror is for the bedroom. You should have a proper place to fix your hair and such." Rose was speechless. These were not necessities but thoughtful gifts, chosen to bring her pleasure. She found herself blinking back tears yet again, overwhelmed by the consideration. On the ride back to the ranch, Rose said, "You keep making me cry, and I am not a woman who cries easily anymore." Warren glanced at her, concerned. "I hope they are not unhappy tears." "No," Rose assured him. "Just unexpected ones. I am not accustomed to kindness, to being considered. It catches me off guard. Then I will endeavor to make kindness so constant that it no longer surprises you," Warren said with a slight smile. Back at the ranch, they unloaded the supplies together, working in a harmony that surprised Rose with its ease. Warren showed her where everything should go, accepting her suggestions for rearranging the kitchen to be more efficient. As afternoon faded into evening, Rose began preparing supper while Warren went to tend the animals. She found herself humming as she worked, a tuneless melody that came from some deep, forgotten place inside her. The kitchen felt welcoming, the late afternoon light golden through the window, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt something that might have been contentment. Warren returned as she was pulling cornbread from the oven, and they sat down to eat together. The meal was simple but satisfying, and afterward, Warren said, "I need to do some work on the fence in the north pasture tomorrow. Would you like to come with me? I could show you more of the property, and you could see what the ranch work actually entails. Or would you prefer to stay here and settle in?" "I would like to come," Rose said. "If I am going to be a rancher's wife, I should understand the ranch." Warren's smile was approving. "Good. We will leave early, make a day of it. I will pack us a lunch." That night, as Rose lay in the bedroom that was now hers by right of marriage, she realized she was not afraid. The lock on the door remained unused, and though she listened for Warren's footsteps, heard him moving around in the spare room, he made no attempt to approach her. She fell asleep feeling safer than she had in years. The days that followed established a pattern. Warren rose early, did the essential morning chores, then woke Rose with coffee and a simple breakfast. They worked together through the day, sometimes on the ranch, sometimes on the house and garden. Warren was an excellent teacher, patient and clear in his explanations, never mocking her ignorance or her mistakes. Rose learned to milk the goats, collect eggs, recognize the signs of illness in the cattle, and mend tack and harnesses. In the evenings, they read together, Warren often choosing the poetry book and reading aloud while Rose sewed or mended. His voice was surprisingly good for reading poetry, deep and expressive, and Rose found herself looking forward to these quiet hours. A week into their marriage, Warren returned from town with a surprise. A small piano, battered but functional, loaded onto a borrowed wagon. Mrs. Henderson mentioned that her daughter left this behind when she married and moved away, Warren explained as he and two hired men maneuvered it into the house. "She was going to sell it, but when I asked if you played, she offered it to us for a fair price. Do you play?" "I used to," Rose said, running her fingers over the worn keys. "My mother taught me when I was a child. I have not played in years." "Then perhaps you could teach yourself again," Warren said, "or teach me. I have always wanted to learn." Rose sat down and tentatively picked out a simple melody, her fingers rusty but gradually remembering. The piano was out of tune, but the sound filled the house with something that had been missing: music, joy, life. That evening, Warren sat beside her on the piano bench, and she taught him the basics, guiding his large, calloused hands to the correct keys. He was a terrible student, clumsy and tone-deaf, but his laughter when he hit a particularly sour note was genuine and infectious. Rose found herself laughing too, actually laughing, the sound startling coming from her own throat. "I think I am hopeless," Warren declared after a particularly disastrous attempt at a scale. "Everyone is hopeless at first," Rose said, surprising herself with the teasing note in her voice. "You just need practice. Or I need to accept that my talents lie elsewhere," Warren said with a grin. "But I like listening to you play. You should play whenever you want. Fill this house with music." 2 weeks after their wedding, Rose realized something that took her breath away. She was happy. Actually happy, not just surviving, not just enduring, but genuinely content with her life. She woke looking forward to the day, went to sleep feeling peaceful, and the hours in between were filled with work and companionship that felt good and right. But with happiness came fear. She had learned the hard way that happiness was fragile, that it could be snatched away in an instant, that trusting it made the loss more painful when it inevitably came. She watched Warren for signs that his kindness was a facade, that his patience would crack, that the real man would emerge with fists and cruelty. But day after day, he remained steady, gentle, respectful of her space and her boundaries. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Warren said quietly, "Rose, can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said, tensing automatically. You ever think you might come to trust me? Not now, I know it is too soon. But someday. Rose looked at him, this man who had shown her nothing but kindness, and felt her throat tighten. I want to, she admitted, but I am afraid. Every time I have trusted before, I have been hurt. I know, Warren said, and I understand. But I need you to know that I will never deliberately hurt you. I am not perfect. I will make mistakes. I will be thoughtless or impatient or stubborn. But I will never raise a hand to you in anger, never demean you, never try to control you through fear. You have my word on that. How can I believe you? Rose asked, the question wrenched from her heart. How can I trust words when words have proven so empty before? Because I will prove it through actions, Warren said. Every single day for as long as it takes. I will show you that kindness is not a trick, that respect is not a facade, that you are safe here with me. Rose wanted desperately to believe him, but belief felt dangerous. Still, something in his steady gaze and the absolute sincerity of his voice made her want to try. I am trying, she whispered. I promise you I am trying. That is all I can ask, Warren said. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was warm, calloused, completely unthreatening. One day at a time, Rose. That is all we need to do. One day at a time, building something real. They sat there as the stars emerged, hands linked, and Rose felt something inside her begin to thaw, like ice in spring slowly yielding to warmth. A month into their marriage, a crisis tested the fragile trust they were building. Warren came in from the barn one evening, his face tight with worry. We have a problem, he said. Several head of cattle have gone missing, and I found tracks that suggest rustlers. I need to ride out and check the far pastures, maybe track whoever took them. Rose felt fear spike through her. Is it dangerous? It could be, Warren admitted. Rustlers do not like to be caught. I will take my rifle, be careful, but I need to go. Then I am coming with you, Rose said immediately. Warren shook his head. No, if there is trouble, I do not want you anywhere near it. And I do not want to sit here wondering if you are alive or dead, Rose shot back. I can ride and I can shoot if you teach me. 2 sets of eyes are better than 1. They stared at each other, and Rose saw Warren's jaw work as he fought between his desire to keep her safe and his recognition of her point. You can shoot, he asked finally. My father taught me when I was young. I am not expert, but I can hit what I aim at. Warren nodded slowly. All right. But you follow my lead, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood. They rode out at dawn, following the tracks northeast across the desert. Warren was an excellent tracker, and Rose found herself impressed by his skill at reading the landscape. They rode for hours, stopping occasionally so Warren could examine the ground or broken vegetation. It was mid-afternoon when they spotted the small canyon where the rustlers had penned the stolen cattle. Warren dismounted and helped Rose down, then handed her a rifle. Stay here with the horses, he said quietly. If anything goes wrong, if you hear shooting, ride back to the ranch and get the sheriff from town. Do not try to help me, just go. Promise me. Rose wanted to argue, but the serious expression on his face stopped her. I promise. Warren approached the canyon carefully, using the rocks for cover. Rose watched, her heart pounding, the rifle heavy in her hands. She saw him reach the edge of the canyon, look down, then freeze. A moment later, a man appeared behind Warren, gun drawn. Rose's breath caught, and without thinking, she raised the rifle and fired, aiming high and wide, not trying to hit the man but to create enough noise and confusion for Warren to react. Her shot echoed across the landscape, and Warren spun, tackling the man before he could fire. They struggled, and Rose ran forward, the rifle ready. By the time she reached them, Warren had disarmed the man and pinned him to the ground. "There is another one in the canyon," Warren said, breathing hard. "Watch this one." Rose pointed the rifle at the rustler, her hands shaking but her aim steady. The man glared at her but did not move. Warren disappeared into the canyon and returned a few minutes later with another man, this one younger, barely more than a boy. "Please," the younger one said, his voice shaking. "We were just hungry. We have not eaten in days." Rose looked at the two rustlers and saw the gauntness of their faces, the worn state of their clothes. They were desperate, not professional thieves. "Warren," she said quietly, "look at them. They are starving." Warren's expression was hard. "They stole from me, from us." "I know," Rose said, "but look at them, really look at them." Warren studied the two men and she saw his expression gradually soften. "Why did you not ask for work? I would have hired you on." "We tried in town," the older man said sullenly. "No one was hiring. We have been riding from ranch to ranch for weeks and no one has work." Warren sighed heavily. "I could have you arrested, should have you arrested." "Yes, sir," the older man said. "We know. We were desperate and stupid." Warren looked at Rose and she saw him seeking her opinion. She thought of her own desperation, of how close she had come to being as destitute as these men, of how kindness from a stranger had saved her. "Give them a chance," she said softly. "Hire them on, let them work off what they stole." Warren studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. But if you steal from me again or harm my wife in any way, I will have you in jail so fast your heads will spin." "Understood." Both men nodded eagerly, relief flooding their faces. The ride back to the ranch was tense, but by the time they arrived, Warren had learned the men's names. Jake and Timothy, brothers from Oklahoma who had come west seeking opportunity and found only hardship. Warren set them up in the bunkhouse, fed them properly for the first time in weeks, and put them to work the next day. That night, as Rose and Warren prepared for bed, he said, "You could have shot that man. Why did you shoot wide?" "Because I did not know if he deserved to die," Rose said simply. "Because mercy seemed like a better choice than violence." Warren looked at her with something that might have been awe. "You are a better person than most, Rose Vance." Hearing her married name spoken with such warmth made Rose's heart stutter. "I just know what it is like to be desperate. To need someone to show kindness when you have no right to expect it." Warren stepped closer, slowly, giving her time to retreat. When she did not, he reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for coming with me today. For trusting me enough to ride into potential danger. For showing me how to be merciful when I wanted to be harsh. You make me a better man." Rose's breath caught at his nearness, at the warmth in his eyes. For the first time since their marriage, she found herself wanting more than the respectful distance they had maintained. She swayed slightly toward him, and Warren's eyes darkened with understanding. "Rose," he said, his voice rough. "I do not want to rush you. We have time." "I know," she whispered. "But maybe I am ready to stop being afraid. Maybe I am ready to try." Warren cupped her face gently in both hands, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, to pull away. When she did not, he lowered his head and kissed her, soft and careful and achingly tender. It was nothing like the brutal claiming she had experienced in her previous marriages. This was a question, not a demand, an offering rather than a taking. Rose felt something inside her crack open, some long frozen part of her heart thawing in a rush that left her dizzy. When they finally pulled apart, Warren rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I am sure," Rose said, and meant it. That night, they came together as true husband and wife, and Warren's patience and gentleness taught Rose that intimacy could be something beautiful rather than something to be endured. Afterward, she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and felt truly safe for the first time in her adult life. "I love you," Warren murmured into her hair. "I think I have loved you since I saw you step into that garden, so brave and so scared, expecting the worst and hoping for the best." Rose felt tears slide down her cheeks, but they were good tears, healing tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could anymore, but I do. I love you." The seasons turned, and their love deepened. Jake and Timothy proved to be excellent workers, grateful for the second chance and loyal to the family that had shown them mercy. The ranch prospered under Warren's careful management, and Rose's attention to the details that made a house a home. Rose planted a larger garden, grew flowers as well as vegetables, and transformed the Stark house into a warm, welcoming space. She made curtains for all the windows, hooked rugs for the floors, and even painted a mural of wildflowers on one wall. Warren encouraged every creative impulse, proud of the way she was making the ranch truly theirs. In the fall, Rose realized she was pregnant. She told Warren one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, and he reacted with such pure joy that she found herself laughing and crying at the same time. "A baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Rose asked, needing to hear him say it. "Happy?" Warren pulled her into his arms. "I am beyond happy. I am blessed. You have given me everything I never dared to dream of." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Warren was attentive without being smothering, helpful without being overbearing. He read every book he could find on childbirth and child rearing, asked Mrs. Henderson and the other ranch wives for advice, and prepared the spare room as a nursery with the same care he brought to every task. On a spring morning in 1885, Rose went into labor. Warren rode to town for the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Yates, and then spent the next 12 hours pacing outside the bedroom, refusing to leave the house despite Mrs. Yates's suggestion that he go work to distract himself. When the baby finally arrived, a healthy boy with a lusty cry and his father's blue eyes, Warren was called in to meet his son. Rose watched as he approached the bed, his eyes wide with wonder, and carefully took the tiny bundle from her arms. "Hello, little one," Warren whispered. "I am your papa. And this is your mama, the bravest, strongest, most wonderful woman in the world." They named him William after Warren's father, and from the moment of his birth, he was loved beyond measure. Warren was a devoted father, rising in the night to bring the baby to Rose for feeding, changing diapers without complaint, rocking William for hours when he was fussy. Rose watched her husband with their son and fell even more deeply in love with the man who had saved her life by offering her kindness. Life on the ranch settled into a rhythm shaped by the seasons and the needs of cattle, land, and family. William grew from baby to toddler, learning to walk in the garden among the flowers his father grew, learning his letters from his mother who had once been a teacher. Jake and Timothy remained on the ranch, becoming almost like family, devoted to the couple who had given them a second chance. When William was 2, Rose became pregnant again, and this time a daughter joined the family. They named her Lily after the flowers Warren had planted in the garden, and she had her mother's dark hair and quiet, watchful eyes. The years passed in a blur of work and love, joy and challenge. There were hard times, droughts that tested the cattle, illnesses that frightened them, accidents that reminded them of life's fragility. But through it all, Warren and Rose faced each challenge together, their partnership growing stronger with every obstacle overcome. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Warren surprised Rose with a day away from the ranch. Jake and Timothy agreed to watch the children, and Warren drove Rose to a beautiful spot in the mountains, where a small stream created a lush oasis in the desert landscape. They picnicked beside the water, and afterward, Warren pulled a small box from his pocket. "I never properly gave you a wedding ring," he said. "I know we married quickly and there was no time for such niceties, but I have been saving and I wanted to give you this." Inside the box was a simple gold band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious but clearly chosen with care and love. Rose's hands shook as Warren slipped it onto her finger beside the plain band she had worn for 10 years. "It is beautiful," she whispered, "but you did not need to do this." "I wanted to," Warren said. "I wanted you to have something that showed the world how much I value you, how much I love you, how grateful I am every single day that you took a chance on me." Rose threw her arms around his neck, kissing him with all the passion and love that had grown between them over the years. "I am the grateful one," she said. "You saved me, Warren. You gave me a life worth living, a love worth having, a family I never thought I would be blessed with." "We saved each other," Warren corrected. "You taught me that strength comes in many forms, that mercy is not weakness, that love is choosing someone every single day, not just once." They lay beside the stream, wrapped in each other's arms, and Rose thought about the terrified woman who had stepped off that stagecoach 10 years ago, expecting cruelty and finding kindness instead. She thought about the flowers Warren had grown with his own hands, the first gift she had ever received that came from genuine caring rather than duty or show. She thought about how one moment of unexpected gentleness had changed the entire trajectory of her life. "What are you thinking?" Warren asked, running his fingers through her hair. "I am thinking about flowers," Rose said. "About how you greeted me with flowers from your garden and how that simple gesture told me everything I needed to know about the kind of man you are." "I was so nervous that day," Warren admitted with a laugh. "I must have picked and re-picked those flowers a dozen times, trying to choose the perfect ones. I was terrified you would take one look at me and run. I was terrified you would take one look at me and I would see cruelty in your eyes," Rose countered. "Instead, I saw kindness. It was so foreign, so unexpected that it made me cry." "You still cry sometimes," Warren said gently, "when I do small kindnesses. After 10 years. "Because I never take them for granted," Rose said. "Every kindness is a gift, Warren. Every gentle word, every patient moment, every time you choose love over anger. I see them all and I treasure them all." They returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, to find their children playing in the garden, chasing each other among the flowers that had grown and multiplied over the years. William, now 12, was tall and lanky, already showing signs of the man he would become. Lily, at 8, was smaller and quieter, but with a determination that reminded Rose of herself. As the years continued to pass, the ranch prospered. Warren expanded the operation, adding the sheep he had always dreamed of, and Rose started a small business selling her preserves and baked goods in town. William grew into a fine young man who shared his father's love of the land, and Lily discovered a talent for working with horses that amazed everyone. When William turned 18, he brought home a young woman named Sarah, the daughter of a neighboring rancher. She was sweet and hardworking, and Rose saw in her son's eyes the same love that had transformed her own life. She gave her blessing gladly, and the wedding was held in the garden among the flowers, with the whole community attending. Lily followed her own path, choosing to train horses professionally rather than marry young. Warren and Rose supported her choice, proud of her independence and skill. At 22, she met a young veterinarian named Daniel who had come west to establish a practice, and they married in a quiet ceremony that suited Lily's reserved nature. As grandchildren arrived, Rose and Warren settled into the comfortable rhythm of their later years. They had built something enduring, a ranch that provided for 3 generations, a family bound by love rather than fear, a legacy of kindness that rippled outward to touch everyone who knew them. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Rose and Warren sat on the porch where they had spent so many evenings, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Their hair was gray now, their faces lined with years of weather and work, but their hands were still linked, their love still strong. "Do you ever regret it?" Warren asked. "Marrying a stranger, coming to this rough land, the hard work and challenges." Rose turned to look at her husband, this man who had given her everything that mattered. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. "You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. You showed me what love actually means, what partnership looks like, what it feels like to be truly safe." "How could I ever regret that? I am the one who received the greater gift," Warren said. "You brought light and warmth and beauty into my life. You taught me to be merciful when I wanted to be hard, to be patient when I wanted to act, to choose love every day even when it would be easier to give up. Everything good in my life came from the moment you stepped into that garden. And you met me with flowers," Rose said, smiling at the memory. "The first of so many gifts." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged, one by one, until the sky was ablaze with light. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family, grandchildren laughing, their daughter-in-law singing as she cleaned up after supper, their son's deep voice telling a story. The garden that Warren had started decades ago now covered half an acre, a riot of color and life that attracted butterflies and hummingbirds and sparked joy in everyone who saw it. "I love you, Rose Vance," Warren said into the gathering darkness. "From the moment I first saw you until my last breath, I will love you." "And I love you, Warren Vance," Rose replied, her voice strong and certain. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, the answer to prayers I did not know how to pray. Thank you for choosing kindness, for giving me flowers, for saving my life in every way that matters." They went inside together, hand in hand, to join their family. And in the morning, Warren would rise early as always and pick fresh flowers from the garden, bringing them to Rose with the same love and care he had shown on that first day 30 years ago. It had become their ritual, his daily reminder that she was valued, cherished, loved. The flowers would keep coming, year after year, until Warren's hands were too stiff with arthritis to work the garden, and then Rose would pick them for him, placing them by his chair where he could see them, smell them, remember all the years they represented. And when his time finally came, decades into a life well lived, Rose would tuck a single flower from his beloved garden into his hands, a symbol of the kindness that had started everything, the gentleness that had defined their love. But that was far in the future. For now, on this anniversary evening in 1914, they were still strong, still together, still building their life one day at a time. The ranch that had started with one man's dream and one woman's desperate hope now employed dozens of people, supported multiple families, and stood as a testament to what could be built when love and respect formed the foundation. Rose looked around the home she had made, filled with the evidence of a life richly lived. Photographs of children and grandchildren, books read and treasured, furniture worn smooth by use, the piano where she still played every evening. She thought about the woman she had been, arriving in Chloride expecting cruelty, because that was all she had known. She thought about the cowboy who had greeted her with flowers, who had chosen kindness when he could have chosen power, who had offered partnership when he could have demanded submission. and she understood, with the clarity that comes from 3 decades of lived experience, that the flowers had been more than a gift. They had been a promise, kept faithfully every day since. A promise of gentleness, of respect, of love freely given and gratefully received. A promise that had transformed 2 solitary, wounded people into a family, a legacy, a love story for the ages. As Rose drifted off to sleep that night, held safe in Warren's arms as she had been for 30 years, her last conscious thought was one of profound gratitude. She had expected cruelty and found kindness instead. She had expected pain and found healing. She had expected merely to survive and had instead learned to truly live. The flowers from Warren's garden kept blooming, year after year, a living reminder that small acts of kindness can change everything, that gentleness is strength, and that true love, freely chosen and faithfully nurtured, can weather any storm and bloom even in the desert. Their story became legend in Chloride and the surrounding ranches. People would speak of Warren and Rose Vance, the cowboy and his bride who had built an empire on love and kindness, who had raised fine children and created a legacy that would endure for generations. Young couples would visit the ranch, hoping to learn the secret of such an enduring marriage, and Warren and Rose would smile at each other, remembering. "Start with flowers," Warren would say. "Small kindnesses matter more than grand gestures. And choose to trust," Rose would add. "Even when you are afraid, even when past experience tells you not to. Sometimes the risk is worth taking." As Rose finally fell asleep in the home she loved, surrounded by family and the evidence of a life well lived, she smiled. She had taken the risk, had chosen to believe in kindness one more time, and it had given her everything. The frightened woman who arrived in Chloride expecting cruelty had found love instead, had built a life that exceeded her wildest dreams, all because a cowboy chose to greet her with flowers from his garden. And that, Rose thought as sleep claimed her, made all the difference.